because without the students, then there wouldn't be a reason for us to be here anyway. And they are our future. So thank you for all attending, and I hope you find this useful. Now, obviously, I come from the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom is in a different situation to Indonesia, in that the Muslim community in the United Kingdom is a minority community. We're about 3 million of us in a population of 70 million people. So you can imagine it's a different, it's a whole different ball game to what you have in Indonesia, where the majority of the population is Muslim, and this has been the case for hundreds of years. So the type of establishments that we have in the United Kingdom are obviously different. A little bit about the history of Islam in Britain might be useful to kind of get a better picture of the situation and how things came about the way they are. Islam has been coming to the United Kingdom since about the 8th century, but we're talking about very small numbers of people, individuals, small numbers. But by about the 16th century, there was more people converting, usually people who went on ships, who were pirates, or people who were, yeah, pirates. You probably think, some people probably think all the English people were pirates around that time, with the colonialization and stuff, but no, they weren't. But yeah, some people who were pirates obviously sailed on the seas a lot, and so came into contact with people from North Africa and the Ottoman Empire. And so there was people who converted because of this connection. And then later on, you had more people sort of coming to Islam in the 19th century. And this is where the origin of my organization, the Association of British Muslims, came about, with the conversion of Sheikh Abdullah William Henry Quilliam. He operated from a building that was like a commercial building that was converted into a mosque. And during this time, obviously, they would have had their own version of madrasa classes at the mosque. And they had quite a significant but small community. They actually called it, I think, the Muslim church, because obviously the situation is different in the UK, and people were unfamiliar with Islam, so they called it a Muslim church, but it was a mosque. And they also used to give Christmas meals on Christmas to try to invite people from the community. And this kind of, it might be something familiar to people in Indonesia, because you have things to do with the Ramayana and the culture previously, and you didn't try to delete everything, you know, but open the door as far as possible to invite people in. And around this time, there was the first purpose-built mosque, also opened in 1889 or thereabouts. And this was in Woking, which is just outside London. And they too must have had something operating in the mosque for Muslim students. But it's very, very small sort of scale at this particular time. And this has been largely the case with a lot of our communities, even when diaspora communities settled here from the Indian subcontinent. Due to the British Empire and Commonwealth, we've got a lot of Muslims in the UK who have origins either in the Indian subcontinent, either in India, in Pakistan, or Bangladesh, or South Africa, other African countries, also from the Caribbean. Some people who come from the Caribbean who were already Muslims. People might not be familiar with the fact that there are Muslims communities already established in the Caribbean. And there's also people who come from the Caribbean who converted to Islam in more recent years. So our community is extremely diverse in the UK, and we've got different approaches depending upon the community and how they've established. But a lot of equivalent of Pesantren are, you know, they began as a part-time madrasa classes in mosques. So for instance, the students would go to normal secular schools and learn a normal secular education in the UK. But then on the weekend or in the evenings, they would go to a madrasa class and learn about the Quran, learn about the hadiths, learn about the lives of the Sahaba Ikram and, you know, other significant people within the history of Islam. Now, depending on whether it was a more traditional community, then you would have either had a more traditional kind of education, or in other cases, unfortunately, thanks to um, various people investing money in our country to push their own agendas, we've had other mosques and madrasas that have opened who have been pushing a different kind of approach to Islam, which is it's not as open and it's not as constructive. Um, although there is pushback against that in recent years. I mean, there's a mosque that I know that is quite a strong Salafi mosque. Yet in recent years, they've changed their whole curriculum. They've changed everything that they're doing, and they've become more open. So we are seeing a change, even with those mosques that were pushing a less constructive approach to Islam. But and another development that we've had in more recent years is that actually specific Islamic institutions have been established as educational institutions. So we've actually got full-time Islamic schools in the UK now that have been set up. They will teach all of the national curriculum subjects that they're required to teach by the government. So they'll teach English, maths, science, technology, all those range of subjects. And they will also teach classes on the Quran, classes on Islam as well. And we've got a number of these which have opened in the UK now. Now, they're not boarding schools like in Indonesia. These are schools that people, they will go home at night and they will come back in the morning, in the daytime. Like a lot of our schools in the UK, that, even schools that are not Muslim schools, they don't operate on the boarding school system. They tend to operate more on, you know, people go home at the end of the day and then they come back in the morning. So it's a different kind of approach to education. In the past, we used to have more boarding schools within mainstream education within the wider society, but they've gone out of fashion. British people tend not to be too happy with boarding schools, and there's various reasons for this, which I'm not going to go into here. But obviously, that's a different cultural situation, and there are reasons for this in the UK, which, I mean, if you're interested, you can look into, or you can ask me about it another time. But we don't have time to cover those issues here. And I'm sure it's not the same as the situation in Indonesia. But this has actually, this development in specific Islamic educational institutions has even got to university level now. And there's at least 2 universities that I know of that have been established by Muslims in the UK that teach university level courses that are fully accredited. And these courses will not just include Islamic courses, but they will include Islamic courses, but they will also include other subjects as well. So there's been an awful lot of developments in our educational institutions in the UK over the past couple of decades, which have really started to change the whole situation and how things are in the UK. A couple of things that I would stress separate to this main conversation is when it comes to Islamic education, we have to ensure that we are rooted in our traditional sources and in our traditional approaches to Islam. But also we have to be living in the 21st century. We have to take account of the developments of science which explain things, which can be proven. I mean, in Islamic education, I mean, traditional Islam, you have to have evidence for things. So, you know, you can't just say, oh, this is a hadith the Prophet Muhammad said, and I'm just going to read it and you have to accept it. No, show me the evidence. Show me the chain of narration. Show me where you get this from. Show me how that meaning in that hadith compares with what the Quran teaches. If it's in opposition to it and the chain is no good, then you can't accept that hadith. This is traditional Islam in Al-Sunnah wa Jamaat. You need evidence. So it's like when we apply that same principle to other issues that Islam might have commented on in the past, Muslim scholars may have commented on in the past with the scientific understanding of their times. But then we are not living in those times. We don't have that same scientific understanding of people 100 years ago or 200 years ago or 300 years ago. A lot of things have been discovered by scientists which people didn't know back then. So we have to harmonize, because I know the sister spoke previously about how there's sometimes epistemological issues between Islamic understanding and scientific understanding. But we have to understand how science works, because science is observing and explaining what exists around us, the universe around us, the creation around us. Well, this is all from Allah. All science can do is observe. It can observe, hypothesize, and develop theories to try and explain what is observed. If those theories, firstly it starts with hypotheses. If those hypotheses don't match with what is observed, they are rejected because there's no evidence for them. But if those hypotheses are backed up by lots of evidence that proves that those hypotheses are true, then they become theories. And a theory in science is basically a fact to the best that we can explain it. So it's important that we take this on board and not just reject it because we are Muslims, but we learn to harmonize what is credible and evidence-based scientific understanding and say, okay, this is a new level of understanding that has come with the century that we are living in. So let's look back at the Quran, let's look back at the Sunnah and see if we have understood them correctly as best as we can. Because the Prophet Muhammad said in his last sermon to take his words and take them forward, teach them to other people and through the generations. Because maybe at some point people will come along who will understand his words better than his audience in the time in the 7th century when he first said these things. So the Prophet Muhammad himself understood that our understanding as human beings would develop, and to keep looking at that and look at what he said, look at both his hadith, sallallahu, and also the teachings in the Quran, and try to understand them with the best of the knowledge that is available to us at any given time. It's very important that we harmonize these things in every generation, and always it's an ongoing thing. It's never something that should stop, because science is always developing, science is always growing. And we are only having this amazing international seminar now thanks to the developments of scientists, thanks to people who are engineers who have used that science to develop the technologies to enable us to have this situation now where we can talk to each other and even have a conference when I'm sitting on the other side of the world. And we readily use these things. So when it comes to education in the classroom, we should also realize, well, if we're readily using this that has been developed through science, this is real. And we have to understand how it works and not try to make issues where there doesn't need to be issues between the scientific and technological understanding of things and the religious understanding of things. Islam is a religion which seeks harmony. It seeks harmony between human beings. It seeks harmony between different communities, between Muslims and Christians and Hindus and Buddhists and all communities. It seeks harmony between human beings and between the natural world. It seeks harmony between different types of understanding. And this is very important that we all understand this, because I know it's not always conveyed in the classroom. And sometimes people can feel a bit shaken. If they've got a traditional understanding of things that they've been taught by their teachers, and then they encounter something which doesn't match with what they've been traditionally taught, sometimes they can be shook. And instead of addressing that, instead of looking into it and coming to an understanding that harmonizes both, they just ignore it. And this is not constructive. So it's very important that we don't go down that path. And I know some have. I mean, I don't think Nahdlatul Ulama does, because Nahdlatul Ulama likes to harmonize things, which is a really beautiful thing about Nahdlatul Ulama. I mean, I myself, I'm a very traditional Muslim in my approach to Islam, which is interesting because how I came into Islam wasn't very traditional. I didn't go to madrasa classes to learn my Islam. I learned my Islam through connections with good teachers, through Maulana Sheikh Nazim, Maulana Sheikh Hisham, through Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, and people of this caliber who were great teachers, and through listening to them and through reading their books and through reading books from traditional sources. But at the same time, how I initially came into Islam was literally through picking up an English copy of the Quran and reading it. It was the Quran that drew me to Islam. And the Quran never felt to me like it was an old book. It never felt to me like this book is 1400 years old. In fact, one of the things that amazed me about the Quran was that I could read it now. Obviously, it was in translation, but I could read that translation now. And it felt like I'm being spoken to by God now. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking to me through this book now. It wasn't 2020 then, this was 20 years ago. So this would have been in the year 2000 when I first started this, you know, but it's, or maybe a couple of years beforehand, because I was reading the Quran for a couple of years before I embraced Islam. But this is one of the miracles, I think, about the Quran, that you can pick up this book and read it. And when you read it with understanding, it doesn't seem like it's an old book. It doesn't seem like it's talking to you from a different time. It's talking to us today. It's talking to every human being, the issues which affect every human being. And I think with any Islamic education that we do, the Quran must always be at the very heart of it. Because, you know, the Quran is a book. The Quran is the book of Allah. The Quran is the book of Islam. So it's very important. And the Quran is also, it doesn't matter whether people are Ahl Sunnah wal Jamaat, or whether they are Shia, or whether they are Salafi, everybody except the Quran. You know, they can't, if you reject Quran, you're not Muslim, you know, everybody except Quran. So it's a very, very good place to start. And always, you know, whatever we're trying to teach, I mean, when I do this in my own practice, I always look at, is there something in the Quran that I can refer to? Is there something in the Quran that backs up what I'm saying? And when we do this, then it puts us in a very strong position where people can't really say anything, because all we're teaching is the Quran and expanding upon the teachings of the Quran. So when it comes to the religious education, I think this is very important. Sometimes we can get so sidetracked and delving into the books of scholars of the past that we lose focus on the Quran. I'm not saying these aren't important things to study, they are. But, you know, sometimes we can lose focus on the Quran. And then we drift away from what the Quran is teaching and into the teachings of scholars of other times, of other generations. And this is where sometimes we run into problems. Because, I mean, it's just like if I try to teach my children the same way that my granddad taught my dad, or, you know, how would they accept that from me? Imam Ali himself said, you know, teach your children according to their generation, because every child is born for their generation, something along these lines, he said. So that we have to always renew how we teach, but not lose our roots. I'm not suggesting we lose our root. We have to keep connection with what we've been doing before, but we also have to always keep making a progress and developing it. And it's not an easy thing to do. So I understand this is why it's not always successful, but it's very important that we approach it in this way. And do not be afraid of new sources of knowledge or understanding, because this is something that, alhamdulillah, is always going to continue. This is a blessing from Allah, that Allah is revealing and opening new understanding to us and new knowledge. That's allowing us to do things that people in the past were never able to do. And we should see it as a blessing from Allah and take whatever good is in these new developments and also contribute to them. In the past, Muslims were among the greatest scientists in the world. Western science itself was kick-started, you know, in the Renaissance period by the understanding of Muslim scientists, by the learning of Muslim scientists. You know, people like Ibn Sina were taught in Western schools as part of Western curriculums up until very, very recently, because they were the top people in their sciences. You know, even the whole secular society that we have in the West is based upon a Muslim idea by Ibn Rushd, who the West knows as Averroes. This idea of separation of government and state, which is not a science, it's a philosophy and a political theory, but it's actually based upon that. So many areas you will find that when you look into them, there are Muslim scientists who started off the developments, but then unfortunately something happened in a lot of Muslim countries where they stagnated, their scientific development stopped. And they says, no, this is how we understand things. And they weren't prepared to continue what they'd been doing previously. And this is something that we have to learn from, because that was a mistake that they made. And this is why, you know, now it's rare that you find someone who's a Muslim scientist who is looked up to by the whole world. Where are our Einsteins today? We should be there. There are 1.61 billion Muslims in the world. And some Muslims are geniuses. You know, we should be there. We should be developing some of these latest hadron colliders and space technologies, and, you know, making some of these great discoveries. We should be there. There's no reason why we can't be there. But we have to be a part of these subjects, a part of these fields of knowledge. Otherwise, if we're not among them, then we won't be there. And then we won't be there for our youngsters to look up to either. So it's very important that we do not, you know, science is not something that is restricted to anybody of any particular religion or not having a religion. Science is something which is it's a field of study that people of all different religions, of all different backgrounds take part in. And we should be more represented in the sciences than what we are. And also in all new developments. And our technologies, as I said previously, they are based upon the sciences. If we don't have the good understanding of the sciences, then we won't be able to develop the new technologies. And then we won't be able to develop our economies as we would like to develop them. So it's very it's very important, sorry, that we get the right approach to this. Inshallah. Anyway, I think I've spoken a lot, so there's another speaker, so I will leave it there. But if anybody has questions, then I'll be happy to answer them. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much, Seth, for the explanation. So I want to sum up your speech. Sheikh explained the history of Islam in UK, and he told us to accept the development of science so our educational institution can be better. And we have to learn to harmonize between Islamic and scientific understanding. And he explained how Islam seeks harmony between different types of understanding. And this is most important. He told us to that whatever we are going to teach, we always need to go back to Quran. So please focus on the Quran. Thank you. And for the last presentation, last but not least, I'll invite Bapak Ali Murphy to deliver his speech. But before that, of course, we would like to get to know him better. So can we show his CV? Tim IT bisa ini nggak tunjukin CV-nya? Baiklah. It's not clear enough. Bapak Ali Murphy, saat ini beliau sedang menempuh pendidikan doktoral di UIN Maulana Malik Ibrahim Malang, mengambil manajemen pendidikan Islam. S2-nya beliau itu di Gajah Mada University dan juga Hokkaido University Jepang, mengambil manajemen pendidikan tinggi. S1 beliau adalah di UIN Sunan Kalijaga Yogyakarta, mengambil manajemen pendidikan Islam. Ada banyak publikasi ilmiah yang telah beliau tulis dari tahun 2014 sampai tahun 2020. Misalnya strategi pembelajaran aktif question student have pada mata pelajaran fikih di TS Negeri 9 Bantul. This is probably the most relevant with our webinar topic, Islamic education system in Singapore, current issues and challenges. Scroll ke bawah. Oke, ini konferensi internasional yang beliau hadiri. Pengalaman kerja 2019 sampai sekarang di Institut Arkan. Okay, I think that's enough. So, I will lengthen the introduction. Please, Bapak Ari, to deliver his speech.
Iya, Mbak. Saya hormati, terima kasih. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahilladzi khalaqal mauta wal hayata liyabluwakum ayyukum ahsanu amala wa huwal azizul ghafur. Pertama yang saya hormati dan saya muliakan Romo Kiai Haji Ahmad Khalwani Nawawi, pengasuh Pondok Pesantren An-Nawawi Berjan Purworejo, Ketua Dewan Senat STAI An-Nawawi Purworejo, dan Wakil Rais Suriah PBNU Jawa Tengah. Kemudian yang terhormat Ibu Hajah Asfaq Khairunisa, Ketua STAI An-Nawawi Purworejo, and the Honorable Syekh Paul Salahuddin Armstrong, Managing Director of Association of British Muslim. Izinkan dalam kesempatan ini saya menyampaikan tentang Islamic Education in Southeast Asia, Current Issues and Debate. Saya ingin menyampaikan in mixed language or blended language in Indonesia and in English, because I think the most of all participant is not only foreign or international participant, but most of all is from Indonesia. And now I would like to share my slide presentation. The topic or the theme at this moment is Islamic education in Southeast Asia, current issues and debate. Seperti yang dijelaskan tadi, saat ini saya selain di Winsuan Kalijaga, tetapi juga menjadi peneliti di Pusat Studi Pendidikan Islam Asia Tenggara di Fakultas Ilmu Tarbiyah dan Keguruan Winsuan Kalijaga. Ini adalah outline yang ingin saya sampaikan pada malam hari ini. Semoga semuanya tetap semangat, tidak ngantuk ya, karena ini juga malam Jumat. Pertama saya ingin menjelaskan Southeast Asia as a area studies, Asia Tenggara sebagai area studies, dan selanjutnya adalah knowledge production of Southeast Asia. Dan yang ketiga, arah baru kajian Asia Tenggara, meletakkan kajian pendidikan Islam Asia Tenggara. Dan yang terakhir, Islamic Education in Southeast Asia, Current Issues and Debate. Bapak Ibu semua, ini adalah peta atau sebaran negara-negara di Asia Tenggara. Yang paling utara ada Myanmar, Laos, kemudian turun lagi Thailand, Kamboja, Vietnam, kemudian Malaysia, Singapura, Brunei, Filipina, Indonesia, dan terakhir adalah Timor Leste. Nanti Mbak Renita, jika saya lebih dari 30 menit mohon diingatkan karena saya tadi membuatnya itu terlalu banyak materinya. Pertama, Asia Tenggara sebagai area studies. Seperti yang saya sampaikan di outline pertama. Van Leer mengatakan pentingnya untuk tidak melakukan observasi from the deck of foreign ship. Maksudnya adalah jangan melihat kajian keilmuan itu dari kacamata asing atau melihat itu dari dek kapal bendera kapal-kapal yang dari asing atau dari luar negeri. Tetapi scholar should conduct studies from local perspective. Jadi seorang cendekiawan, seorang akademisi itu harus melihat kajian itu dari perspektif lokal. Kalau kita di Asia Tenggara, pendidikan Islam di Asia Tenggara, kita harus melihatnya dari perspektif lokal, tidak selalu melihatnya dari kacamata asing. Bagaimana kita akan jernih, akan objektif apabila melihat diri kita tapi dari kacamata orang barat misalnya. Itu kan tidak fair, tetapi kita juga yang paling penting adalah bagaimana kita mengkaji, membaca, menilai pendidikan kita itu dari perspektif lokal. Sehingga dari Van Leer ini menginspirasi lahirnya Asia Tenggara sebagai area studies di paruh kedua abad 20. Dia semakin tegas menjelaskan pada dua kata kunci atau dua tesis. Pertama, the region with common characteristic could be identified and examined collectively. Maksudnya adalah daerah itu region dengan karakteristik umum dapat diidentifikasi dan diperiksa secara kolektif. Kemudian yang kedua, bahwa daerah harus dipelajari dari dalam, from within, pada dasar pengetahuan yang terperinci. Seperti itu. Jadi pentingnya Asia Tenggara itu sebagai area kajian. Selanjutnya, sebagai area studies juga, Asia Tenggara sebagai area studies itu sebagai pendekatan yang multidisiplin, melihat dari berbagai disiplin keilmuan. Sehingga pada tahun 1960-an di Amerika lahirlah Association for Asian Studies. Kemudian tahun 70-an lahirlah Asian Studies Association of Australia atau ASAA atau ASAA. Kemudian tahun 90-an paling tidak ada 11 universitas yang mempunyai pusat kajian Asia atau Asia Tenggara di Amerika. Kemudian ada School of Oriental and Asian Studies di London, kemudian di Perancis dan seterusnya. Itu adalah sejarah atau jalan Asia Tenggara itu sebagai area studies. Jadi historinya itu seperti itu. Jadi memang sejak dulu itu Asia Tenggara itu sebagai area studies, kemudian kita juga harus tetap melihat itu dari kacamata kita sendiri. Kita harus memulai itu. Selanjutnya adalah knowledge production of Southeast Asia. Jadi produksi pengetahuan di Asia Tenggara itu seperti apa sih? Kira-kira begitu. Nah, dalam perspektif knowledge management atau manajemen pengetahuan dalam buku induknya Nona Katakechi itu bahwa pengetahuan itu dibentuk dari dua, yaitu tacit of knowledge dan explicit knowledge. Nah, ketika explicit knowledge itu disesi modelkan atau sosialisasi, eksternalisasi, kombinasi, dan internalisasi, maka itu akan menjadi production atau sebuah karya atau sebuah hasil dari pengetahuan itu. Nah, knowledge production di Asia Tenggara itu ternyata luar biasa. Sejak dulu itu ada jurnal-jurnal. Jadi product of knowledge itu pasti di dalam dunia akademisi itu adalah jurnal. Karena pengalaman, kemudian pengetahuan-pengetahuan itu adalah tacit, kemudian dieksplisitkan, didokumentasikan menjadi sebuah karya atau produk artikel, maka pasti akan dipublish di jurnal. Nah, pertama ada jurnal Asian Studies, Bapak Ibu semua. Jurnal Asian Studies ini ternyata letaknya tidak di Asia Tenggara, tetapi di mana? Cambridge University, yaitu tempatnya Syekh Paul Salahuddin Armstrong di UK, di Inggris. Kemudian juga Journal of Southeast Asian Studies sama, itu juga di Cambridge. Ini sejak tahun 1960 yang mengkaji tentang humanities dan social science. Jadi nanti Bapak Ibu yang hadir di sini yang jadi dosen, untuk kepentingan akademik bisa publish di jurnal-jurnal ini. Kemudian juga ada jurnal Indonesia and the Malay World. Ternyata ini juga tidak ada di Asia Tenggara, tetapi di publish di Taylor and Francis Online atau Tanfon Online, yaitu yang mengkaji bidang di Art and Humanities, kemudian Religion, Religious Studies, History, dan Antropologi, kemudian juga ada Southeast Asia Research. Nah, tidak banyak akademisi yang bisa mempublikasikan atau produk knowledge-nya itu dipublikasikan di Indonesia and the Malay World. Jadi hanya ada beberapa cendekiawan yang mampu tembus di jurnal ini. Semoga nanti Bapak Ibu semua bisa tembus di jurnal ini. Selanjutnya banyak lagi, ada Archipel 18, kemudian Modern Asian Studies, kemudian ada Journal of the Malaysian Branch of the Royal Asiatic Society dan RIMA. Kemudian ini Indonesia, ini adalah jurnal-jurnal di tentunya tidak di Indonesia. Tapi ternyata negara kita tercinta ini yang luar biasa sudah menjadi nama jurnal terkenal di luar negeri, dan mungkin sedikit sekali akademisi yang bisa nangkring nulis di jurnal ini. Dan selanjutnya adalah Muslim Through Discourse, John Erbawan. Dan yang terakhir adalah Making Modern Muslim, The Politics of Islamic Education in Southeast Asia. Ini ditulis oleh Robert Hefner. Kalau Bapak Ibu yang mendalami kajian pendidikan Islam di Asia Tenggara pasti tidak asing dengan beliau, Robert Hefner, yang menulis Making Modern Muslim. Beliau ini adalah orang Amerika di Boston University, tetapi sejak mudanya sebagai akademisi selalu melakukan kajian penelitian utamanya di negara-negara Asia Tenggara, khususnya di Indonesia. Beliau saat ini juga menjadi editorial board di jurnal kami di Fakultas Ilmu Tarbiyah dan Keguruan, yaitu di Jurnal Pendidikan Islam. Beliau salah satu dewan yang luar biasa kerjanya, kemudian mereview artikel-artikel kami. Buku yang sangat terkenal adalah Making Modern Muslim. Buku ini merupakan kompilasi hasil proyek penelitian yang dibiayai oleh National Bureau of Asian Research (NBR) di Seattle, Washington, diawali pada bulan Desember 2004 hingga Januari 2007. Buku ini secara garis besar menggambarkan perkembangan politik pendidikan in Southeast Asia, especially in the majority Muslim, such as in Malaysia 60% and Indonesia more than 80%. And minority Muslims such as in Thailand, South Thailand, Philippines, and Cambodia. Although this book, kumpulan hasil riset di berbagai negara di Asia Tenggara yang tentunya memiliki perbedaan latar kultur dan geografis yang berbeda, namun buku ini memiliki benang merah yang mampu menghubungkan dan menggambarkan relevansi sosiohistoris antar negara di Asia Tenggara dalam bidang pendidikan Islam tentunya. Asia Tenggara pada masa kontemporer ini mengalami perkembangan dan memunculkan warna baru dalam praktek pendidikan Islam. Contohnya di Indonesia yang tidak hanya dikenal dengan adanya pesantren, seperti yang tadi diutarakan oleh Ibu Hajah Asfah Khairunisa, tetapi pendidikan Islam juga mulai berkembang dengan adanya madrasah dan sekolah Islam yang juga berlomba-lomba memberikan yang terbaik guna mencetak siswa yang sejalan dengan syariat Islam. Maka dampak modernisasi dalam pendidikan Islam sangat memiliki pengaruh dan peranan penting pada pembangunan nasional. Jadi ternyata dari hasil penelitian Pak Robert Hefner itu tidak hanya dikenal dengan adanya pesantren yang kemudian menjadi ciri khas utama. Alhamdulillah ada pesantren yang besar di Purworejo, yaitu pesantren An-Nawawi, tetapi juga ternyata Romo Kiai Haji Ahmad Khalwani Nawawi juga mendirikan madrasah bersama Ibu Asfa Khairunisa. Jadi sudah sesuai temuannya Prof. Robert Hefner ini dengan kondisi di lapangan. Kemudian kasusnya di Indonesia, Hefner mengklasifikasikan tipologi lembaga pendidikan Islam itu terdiri dari 3 bentuk. First, atau pertama, pengajian Al-Quran dikhususkan untuk membaca dan menghafal Al-Quran, namun belum kepada pemahaman. Dan yang kedua, pondok pesantren, lembaga untuk mengkaji dan memahami, mendalami paham keislaman. Kemudian madrasah sebagai sekolah modern yang sudah dilengkapi dengan fasilitas seperti adanya kelas, meja, dan peralatan atau sarana prasarana lain. Nah, kalau Stai An-Nawawi Purworejo kelihatannya sudah sangat komplit, yaitu sebagai lembaga pendidikan Islam, pondok pesantren yang mengkaji dan mendalami paham keislaman, sehingga melahirkan sarjana-sarjana yang luar biasa. Tadi seperti di intro videonya banyak alumni-alumni yang sudah mengabdikan dirinya di bidang banyak hal dari sosial, politik, dan sebagainya. Selanjutnya, ini ada jurnal namanya Jurnal Pendidikan Islam, yaitu sebenarnya jurnal kami saat saya sebagai managing editornya di jurnal ini. Jadi nanti kalau Bapak Ibu dosen ada yang tertarik mempublikasikan hasil penelitiannya bisa disubmit ke jurnal kami, yaitu kita sama, aims and scope-nya adalah Islamic Education in Southeast Asia, covering all aspect of Islamic education from the deradikalisasi, filosofi, gender, kemudian Nusantara Islamic education, pendidikan Islam Nusantara, pesantren education, sampai kepada madrasah education. Jadi nanti saya tunggu artikel-artikel terbaiknya, dan ini menjadi salah satu keunggulan kami mengambil tema pendidikan Islam Asia Tenggara sebagai kekhasan dalam rangka melihat dari perspektif lokal keilmuan, bukan hanya dari kacamata asing. Dan selanjutnya adalah arah baru kajian Asia Tenggara, yaitu meletakkan kajian pendidikan Islam Asia Tenggara. Pertama, Asia Tenggara, Asia itu harus sebagai metode berpikir, kemudian metode analisis, metode kajian dan sebagainya, yaitu ditulis oleh Kuan Hing Chen, Asia as a Method Toward the Imperialization. Kemudian ada meletakkan bahwa pendidikan ASEAN Tenggara itu sebagai interreferencing, yaitu ditulis oleh pakar pendidikan Islam Asia Tenggara atau pakar Asia, yaitu Ahwa Ong, kemudian Chua Ben Huat, kemudian Gok Ben Lan. Interreferencing itu adalah maksudnya sebagai referensi utama, interreferencing. Jadi seperti yang saya awali tadi, yang fun layer tadi, si Ahwa Ong ini juga memiliki kegelisahan yang sama. Dia memiliki gagasan bahwa Barat dapat menjadi model atau panduan untuk pembangunan ekonomi pendidikan, tetapi di sisi lain kita di Asia itu juga harus mampu menggantikan dengan referensi untuk pembangunan ekonomi pendidikan. Jadi tidak hanya dari perspektif Barat, tetapi juga dari perspektif Asia atau Asia Tenggara. Jadi Ahwa Ong itu udah gelisah sekali sehingga menulis buku ini. Nah, salah satu dampak dari mindset atau cara pandang bahwa Asia itu harus menjadi interreferencing adalah hari ini bisa kita lihat bahwa dominasi industrialisasi itu untuk tujuan ekspor itu dikuasai oleh Asia. Semoga ke depan dunia pendidikan juga berkiblat ke Asia. Kemudian ada Inter-Asia Cultural Studies ditulis oleh selanjutnya ada ASEAN Antropologi. Kemudian ini ada Jaringan Ulama Timur Tengah dan Kepulauan Nusantara oleh Profesor Dr. Azumardi Azra. Ini adalah salah satu cendekiawan yang luar biasa. Kemudian ada Islam on the Move, The Tabligh Jamaah in Southeast Asia, Jamaah Tabligh ditulis Faris Anur. Kemudian ada Islam in Southeast Asia, Politik, Social and Strategic Challenges for the 21st century, kemudian the Islamic voluntary sector in Southeast Asia, kemudian Islam in Southeast Asia, Negotiating Modernity dari Malaysia, penulisan Nur Syahril Saad. Dan yang terakhir ini ada buku yang cukup terkenal di dalam kajian pendidikan Islam Asia Tenggara, itu adalah Alternative Voice in Muslim Southeast Asia, Discourses and Struggle. Ini ditulis oleh Nur Syahril Saad dan Azhar Ibrahim. Buku ini dulu pernah dibahas di CRCS UGM. Buku ini mengkaji tentang bagaimana tantangan bagi suara progresif yang terjadi di 3 negara besar. Jadi suara-suara yang menyuarakan kemajuan, progresivitas, keadilan, gender itu di 3 negara besar, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapura. Juga di dalam buku ini melihat multikulturalisme dan sekularisme menjadi jalan yang ditempuh oleh 3 negara tersebut. Tentunya kalau Indonesia, kita di Ahlus Sunnah wal Jamaah sangat menghargai perbedaan multikulturalisme. Kemudian kalau sekularisme saya kira tidak ya, mungkin ini di Singapura. Kalau di Malaysia juga multikulturalisme juga kuat sekali. Kemudian di buku ini juga menganalisis jalan dan usaha yang ditempuh oleh suara progresif di tengah dominasi negara dan pejabat keagamaan yang membatasi gerak para voicer atau penyuara itu. Jadi memang ini juga melihat bagaimana tantangan itu dibenturkan dengan pejabat-pejabat, kemudian seperti itu. Nah, kalau meminjam istilahnya Khalid Abu El Fadl, kita itu harus otoritatif bukan otoriter. Jadi kita harus menyampaikan berdasarkan otoritas bukan otoriter. Kemudian ini adalah current issues and debate, tetapi ini saya awali di Islam in Southeast Asia. Kemudian nanti ada Islamic education. Jadi isu hari ini Islam di Asia Tenggara itu pertama multiple or alternative modernity. Jadi alternatif modernitas itu sering digaungkan oleh Philip Gaonka, Nilofer Gole. Kemudian yang kedua transnational mobility in Southeast Asia, UNCUL, yaitu mobilitas transnasional di Asia Tenggara yang juga kita sering rasakan. Kemudian ada absence and resonance, Chua Beng Huat. Kemudian isu yang terakhir itu embodiment and sense. Itu adalah isu-isu hari ini di dalam kajian Islam di Asia Tenggara. Nah, bagaimana kalau pendidikan Islamnya isunya adalah hari ini isunya adalah madrasah dan pesantren, tetap sama dengan lahirnya undang-undang pesantren. Tentunya di Stai An-Nawai Purworejo, Bu Hajah Asfa Khairunisa sudah mencermati adanya undang-undang pesantren tersebut. Ini menjadi isu hari ini. Kemudian yang kedua, Islamic School and Middle Class Muslim, sekolah Islam dan Muslim kelas menengah. Jadi bagaimana Muslim kelas menengah itu berkonsepsi atau lembaga pendidikan Islam, sekolah Islam itu berkonsepsi Muslim kelas menengah. Nah, itu melahirkan apa? Sekolah Islam internasional. Kalau di Malang ada Tazkiyah, kemudian satu lagi yang terkenal itu saya lupa. Kalau di Jogja banyak sekali juga sama, ada Al-Azhar Kairo, kemudian ada Al-Azhar, kemudian Abu Bakar dan sebagainya. Itu adalah isu hari ini. Kemudian ada Integrated Islamic School, sekolah IT, Islam terpadu, SD IT, SMP IT, SMA IT, itu adalah isu hari ini di bidang pendidikan Islam Asia Tenggara. Itu Prof. Nur Hadi Hasan, Yusuf Hadi, Wasistor Harjojati sudah sering memantik diskusi, menulis artikel tentang ini. Kemudian ini salah satu artikel tentang isu-isu pendidikan Islam Asia Tenggara. Pertama tulisan saya sendiri di Jurnal Pendidikan Islam mengkaji tentang sistem pendidikan Islam di Singapura, isu-isu hari ini dan tantangannya, bahwa kalau di Singapura itu segala jenis bentuk pendidikan itu di bawah MUIS, Majelis Ugama Singapura. Kalau di kita seperti Kementerian Agama, Dirjen Pendidikan Islam seperti itu. Kemudian ada tulisannya Jaden Park and Niyozov tentang madrasah, pendidikan madrasah di Asia dan Asia Tenggara. Beliau meneliti tentang jumlah madrasah-madrasah di Asia dan Asia Tenggara. Saya kira itu Bapak, Ibu semua, dan semua partisipan di internasional webinar malam hari ini yang bisa saya sampaikan tentang current issues dan debate pendidikan Islam di Asia Tenggara. Nanti bisa kita lanjutkan di sesi discussion. Begitu, terima kasih. Moderator, saya kembalikan. Wallahul muwaffiq ila aqwamit thoriq. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih Pak Ali penjelasannya. Sangat-sangat menarik sekali ya, terutama PowerPoint-nya. Very well thought, I can say. Ini kayaknya yang jadi mahasiswanya Bapak nggak mungkin tidur di kelas ya. Oke. Tadi pesan beliau, jangan melihat kajian keilmuan negara kita dari kacamata asing. Seorang akademisi harus melihat menggunakan perspektif lokal, bukan dari kacamata asing. Thank you very much. Really important message for me, karena selama ini saya selalu menggunakan kacamata asing untuk melihat pendidikan kita. Oke, next agenda is Q&A. Jadi kita masuk pada sesi tanya jawab. Jika ingin bertanya, silahkan bisa melalui chat Zoom. Silahkan menyebutkan identitas dan pertanyaan ditujukan kepada siapa. Please mention your identity and to whom the question is addressed if you want to ask question. Baiklah, di sini sudah ada satu pertanyaan yang masuk. Dari Anis Fauzi, Queen Banten. Pertanyaan ditujukan untuk Pak Ali Murfi. Adakah fenomena Muslim yang menarik di Timor Leste? Silakan Bapak bisa dijawab ya.
Terima kasih pertanyaannya tentang adakah fenomena menarik pendidikan Islam di Timor Leste. Tetapi ini mohon maaf, saya belum melakukan kajian atau membaca literatur bagaimana perkembangan pendidikan Islam di Timor Leste. Saya baru beberapa kali membaca di Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapura, Thailand, Filipina, Brunei, Kamboja, Vietnam. Jadi saya tidak bisa menjawab dengan detail tentang perkembangan pendidikan Islam di Timor Leste. Tetapi kalau melihat secara histori bahwa dulu Timor Leste pernah menjadi bagian dari Negara Kesatuan Republik Indonesia, saya kira sedikit banyak perkembangan pendidikannya tidak jauh dari apa itu madrasah. Tapi juga perlu diingat bahwa dulu Timor Leste itu kan basisnya non-Muslim, tetapi saya kira tidak berkembang dengan pesat karena secara mayoritas bukan Muslim, tetapi saya yakin di sana tetap ada madrasah seperti itu. Terima kasih.
Baiklah, terima kasih atas penjelasannya. Selanjutnya, Mr. Paul, there is a question for you. So the question is from Bapak Adiwito from Sai Anawawi Purorjo. Is in the UK the discourse about integration between science and religion like in Indonesia? I think mungkin maksudnya is the discourse about integration between science and religion the same as in the UK, the same as in Indonesia?
Okay, well, I have to listen to a lot of discourse in Indonesia to be able to make a direct comparison, because obviously there's a lot going on. But there is certainly in the UK, there are a number of thinkers like myself who are making this point that it's very important that we teach Islam in a way that makes sense in the times that we're living in. You know, that is true to the Quran, is true to the teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but at the same time is not, you know, saying stuff that's old science that doesn't make sense anymore, that nobody actually accepts. You know, this sometimes happens. Actually, probably more than sometimes. And so it's very important that we educate ourselves with science. I mean, to be honest, I've always been reasonably strong on the sciences. I was interested in the sciences before I was interested in religion. So for me personally, I never see such a big conflict. And it's quite easy for me to identify things when they're told to me. And I say, okay, well, this is old science. It's just old science that some scholar was obviously taught. It was in a book. Somebody's picked it up. And they're quoting this now in 2020. They shouldn't be quoting that. Maybe the scholars' other teachings on stuff that were less scientific were very good. But when it comes to the science, when he's teaching the science of 400 years ago or 300 years ago, then it's, you know, it's best to just put that in history. That was historical understanding. Nothing wrong with it as historical understanding. But when it comes to in 2020, we have to look at modern understanding. And it's not against religion to do that. This is the important point. It is not against religion to accept modern scientific understanding. And if we think it is, then we need to study the Quran more, because it's not against Quran. This is very important, and sometimes it's mispresented. But yes, there are people obviously in the UK, also in the United States, and I think any fairly highly educated Muslim scholar anywhere in the world, they will be discussing very similar things, to be honest, and not just within our, you know, Ahl Sunnah wal Jamaat, but within all different groups. It is a subject that comes up increasingly now.
So another question for Sheffield. So the question is from Wahyu Purwawitanto from Purworejo. How is the development of pondok pesantren in the UK? Pondok pesantren, what's pondok pesantren? And what's the curriculum used in the UK?
Okay, in the United Kingdom, we don't really have pesantren because it's the way Islam is developed in the United Kingdom is different. Maybe if we had more Indonesian Muslims, we would have pesantren in the UK. And I think that would be a beautiful development, to be honest. Because I'm very impressed with the pesantrens that I visited when I was in Indonesia. And I like the way they're largely self-sufficient. The whole approach of the pesantren, where you've got the mosque and you've got the school and you've got the boarding school, and often you've got a series of businesses which are built around the pesantren, and some of their proceeds go towards the pesantren, which then supports the pesantren. So the pesantren is not dependent, or at least not too dependent, on any other sources of funding, because they can self-support themselves through the economic development around and connected with the pesantren. This is a model I think in the UK British Muslims can learn from. And one of the things, the recent visit of myself, Mohammed Abbasi, and Adnan Sohail really took back to Britain when we visited Indonesia, is that we have to learn from this and do more of this in the UK, in the way we run our mosques and in the way we run our Muslim schools. But we don't have pesantren in the same way. And also pesantren tend to be boarding schools in Indonesia. We don't tend to have boarding schools much in the UK anymore. In the past, the normal not Muslim population in the UK used to have boarding schools, but a lot of them closed down within the past few decades. So it's not that many people who go to boarding schools in the UK anymore, of any kind. It's a different environment, a different system.
Thank you very much, Sheffield, for the explanation. Now I think we've come to the next agenda. Sesi tanya jawab telah selesai. Sekarang kami mohon waktunya untuk sesi foto bersama. Kami mohon seluruh peserta webinar untuk menyiapkan gaya terbaiknya. So our IT team will be taking your pictures. Please get ready. I'll count 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. 1, 2, 3. Smile. The next slide. 3, 2, 1. Sorry for the slow response. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Cheese. How many slides? 5. Okay. Setunggal kali 3. Okay, next. 1, 2, 3. Smile. Once again, I think. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we have now come at the end of the program. Alhamdulillah serangkaian acara webinar telah selesai. Mohon izin untuk mengutip sebuah ungkapan dari Marcel Proust ya. So, the real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking no landscape, but in having no eyes. Bahwa penemuan sesungguhnya itu bukan soal menemukan hal baru, tapi soal memiliki mata dan sudut pandang baru. Hari ini, ketika narasumber kita yang luar biasa baru saja meminjamkan mata baru kepada kita semua, sehingga kita bisa melihat pendidikan Islam dan kebudayaan, especially di Southeast Asia and UK dengan lebih baik dan lebih jernih. Oleh karena itu kita sampaikan terima kasih banyak kepada ketiga narasumber kita. Thank you for all the speakers. And finally, I would like to express my appreciation to all the participants. Thank you for attending this webinar. And see you next time, everybody. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Nyanyi.
Tuan Kasir.
Aktivis ngapain? Teman Pak Ali Murfi. Thank you, Mr. Paul.
Jadi dong apa dulu.
Oke, selamat malam semua.
Iya, sama-sama, Mbak.